Hi, Terry Ryder from Hotspot, bringing you Hotspot of the Week at a slightly unusual time. Right now I'm in Bendigo in regional Victoria, and I'm here to look at recent investments that I made personally, but also interested to have another look around this very important regional city in Victoria. But I've spoken quite a lot about Bendigo in these broadcasts and many of my pieces of writing. And so I'm going to focus on a location which is very, very close to here, which I actually drove through last night getting to Bendigo, and that's Mitchell Shire, immediately north of Melbourne. As I've said a number of times in my writing and my broadcast, many of the strongest growth markets in Australia right now are found in regional Victoria. It's been a compelling growth location for real estate markets, strong sales activity, low vacancies, rising prices. Many locations have risen more than 10% in the last 12 months. Some have risen more than 20%. So we're finding many of the strongest markets in this part of Australia, to the extent that we have nominated regional Victoria as the strongest market jurisdiction anywhere in the country at the moment. Mitchell Shire, it's what you might call a series of hill change towns, small to medium-sized regional centres immediately north of Melbourne, have become very popular. Many of the locations in regional Victoria that have thrived as property markets in the last 2 years have done so boosted by buyers out of Melbourne, both home buyers and investors searching for a higher level of affordability, perhaps better rental yields or a different lifestyle. And some of the towns such as KIlmore, Seymour, Broadford, Wallan have had a big uplift in the number of buyers, and as a consequence their prices have risen. Proximity to Melbourne is very important in terms of what's going on with property markets here. Growing demand for affordable lifestyle locations. Unemployment rate is much lower than the national average and Victorian averages. And median prices, typical pricing for housing, is perhaps half what you would pay for middle Melbourne, the middle market of the capital city. So all of these are reasons why these places have become very popular for both investors and home buyers lately. Good rail links back to central Melbourne. Always remembering, of course, that not everybody works in the CBD. The vast majority of jobs in any city aren't in the CBD, they're in suburban jobs nodes, and that's the case with Melbourne. Many of the biggest jobs nodes in Melbourne are actually in the northern suburbs along the Metropolitan Ring Road, the Hume Highway. So anyone living in the towns of Mitchell Shire but having jobs in those sorts of places actually has a reasonably short commute to get to work. Or they might be living in or working in a city like Bendigo, where I am this morning, a city of over 120,000 people with lots of jobs nodes in its own right. So Mitchell Shire, just in terms of placing it on the map, Wallan's about 60 kilometres north of the Melbourne CBD. Seymour's about 115 kilometres north. Much closer, of course, to the northern fringes of the Melbourne metropolitan area. Considered a great place to raise kids. So demographically, it's got a younger demographic than state averages. The Mitchell Shire admin headquarters are in the town of Broadford, but Wallan is the most populous town. It's about 11 or 12,000 people. Lots of manufacturing goes on there, government administration, agriculture, tourism, horse type activities, Victoria's largest military training centre at Puckapunyal, just outside Seymour. As part of this, lots of manufacturing, food production, packaging products, machinery and equipment manufacture. And some of the nation's biggest, best known companies have a presence here, such as Allen's Lollies and National Paper Industries. So lots going on in the local economy locally, as well as proximity to the jobs nodes of Melbourne. Tourism is very important. There's lots of festivals here. There are national parks, lots of just, any sort of cute hill change type towns that would bring weekend tourists, day tripper tourists, etc., from the big city. couple of major hospitals at KIlmore and Seymour, so plenty on offer for people living in this area. But of greatest importance to us, of course, is the property market. Now, the thing that stands out is the very low vacancies. This is a feature throughout regional Victoria. One of the factors driving the strength of property markets in this jurisdiction is the low vacancies. The towns of Mitchell Shire, particularly low vacancies. The Seymour postcode, about 0.5%. The KIlmore and Broadford postcodes have vacancies below 1.5%, and Wallan's around 2%. So that's the first factor. Affordability, particularly relative to Melbourne, is another factor here. Most of these towns have median prices somewhere in the 400,000, but Seymour is actually 295,000, so a high level of affordability there. They've been showing pretty good growth in the last 12 months. Most of them have risen by 10% or more. Broadford's up 15% and KIlmore's up 13%. Rental yields better than Melbourne's on average, sort of 4 to 5% in most of the towns, but not as high as you can get in other parts of regional Victoria. And the future for these places, well, it's just projected by all the state government figures that these towns are going to undergo some fairly substantial growth, some more than others. They're all going to grow according to the government projections over the next 20 years. Growth of people moving out of Melbourne, looking for a different lifestyle or a greater level of affordability. KIlmore is expected to grow in the next 20 years from 8,500 to 12,500. Seymour and Broadford are expected to grow a bit, but the biggest growth is going to be in Beveridge, which is currently about 1,700. It's going to grow to 20,000, and Wallan from 11,500 currently to over 30,000 in the next 20 years. So a couple of those locations in particular expected to grow massively according to the state planning people. So yeah, Mitchell Shire, one of those places in regional Victoria that have had very, very strong growth markets for the past 2 years, with a lot of demand coming out of Melbourne, partly driven by the affordability comparison and partly by the lifestyle factor. And yeah, we're now seeing the growth in regional Victoria ripple further out. It's now common to find locations that are 2 or 3 hours perhaps from the capital city have had median price growth of 10 to 15% in the last 12 months. Places like Echuca, Benalla, Wangaratta, Mildura, Bright, many others. So it really is very much a growth market. We're not hearing about it, of course, because media's obsession with the 2 biggest cities and extrapolating what's happening there into a national situation, which isn't the case. It's very much the case that markets are driven by local factors, the local economy, what's happening in the local area rather than national factors. So we have lots of different scenarios playing out across the country at any point in time, including right now. So while Sydney and Melbourne markets have been in decline, regional Victoria, generally speaking, has been rising strongly, and the towns of Mitchell Shire is a great example of that. That's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspot signing off. Let's talk again soon.